You ever sit in your car after work, engine off, hands still on the steering wheel, and just stare at the dashboard for a minute? Not because you're tired. Not exactly. But because you're thinking about numbers. The rent, the mortgage, the credit card, the grocery bill that somehow jumped again. The quiet little subscription charges that sneak in like dust under a door. And then, somewhere in that fog of math and mild anxiety, you wonder, how do people actually become millionaires? Not the flashy kind, not the crypto-lucky, lottery-winning, overnight miracle kind. Just regular people. Because, if you're honest, you don't want a yacht. You just want breathing room. You want to stop checking your bank app before you order dinner. You want to look at your future and not feel that low hum of uncertainty in your chest. I've spent more time than I'd like to admit thinking about that hum. My name is Theodore, and I spend too much time thinking about money. Not in the greedy way, but in the psychological way. Why some people quietly build wealth over decades, while others, just as smart and hardworking, stay stuck in the same financial loop year after year. I sit in coffee shops and watch people swipe cards and wonder what their internal dialogue sounds like. I read financial statements like some people read novels. I've helped people untangle their finances, and I've untangled my own. And here's something that changed the way I see everything. $1 million is not built in a moment of brilliance. It's built in a habit. A habit that looks boring, repetitive, almost laughably small in the beginning. Like setting aside $1,000 a month. That's it. No secret stock tip. No startup exit. No 10 times in 10 days nonsense. Just $1,000 every month, relentlessly. Now, I know what you're thinking. $1,000? That's not small. And you're right. For some people, that number feels impossible. For others, it's doable but uncomfortable. But stay with me, because the number is only part of the story. The real story is what that habit does to your brain, your identity, and your future. Because if you consistently invest $1,000 a month into broad market index funds, let's say, earning an average of around 8% annually, over time, something almost magical happens. Not fast, not dramatic, but inevitable. And once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. So let's talk about how a $1,000 a month habit can build $1 million, and why the habit matters more than the million. The first shift, thinking in years, not paychecks. Most people think in pay cycles. Bi-weekly, monthly, maybe quarterly if they're disciplined. But wealth? Wealth doesn't care about your next paycheck. It cares about your next decade. I remember when I first ran the numbers seriously. I was sitting at my desk late at night, spreadsheet open, coffee cold. I typed in $1,000 per month, 8% annual return, 30 years. And the number that popped up at the end wasn't dramatic. It wasn't fireworks. It was just over $1 million. I blinked. That was it? No genius-level investing, no perfect timing. Just time. 30 years sounds long, I know. It sounds like a prison sentence when you're in your 20s. It sounds like someday when you're in your 30s. It sounds like I should have started earlier when you're in your 40s. But here's the quiet truth. 30 years will pass anyway. You'll blink and your car will be 10 years old. Your kid will be taller than you. The restaurant you love will have changed owners twice. The question isn't whether time will move. It's whether your money will move with it. When you invest $1,000 every month, you're not just putting money into the market. You're buying future time freedom. You're slowly constructing a machine that works while you sleep, while you're at work, while you're on vacation arguing about where to eat. And that machine doesn't care if you're in a good mood. It just keeps compounding. Why does this matter? Because the biggest barrier to becoming a millionaire isn't intelligence. It's impatience. We live in a world of instant everything. Same-day shipping, 2-day diet transformations, viral fame overnight. But compound interest is boring. It doesn't trend. It's like planting a tree. For years, it looks like nothing is happening. Then one day, you notice shade where there wasn't any before. If you can shift from thinking, how much did I make this month, to, where will this decision put me in 20 years, you've already separated yourself from most people. And that shift, that's powerful. The second shift, the habit is the real asset. Let's talk about something slightly uncomfortable. Most people could save more than they think. Not everyone. I know some people are genuinely stretched thin. Rent is high. Wages don't always cooperate. Life throws curveballs. Medical bills, family emergencies, the car that decides to die at the worst possible moment. But there's also lifestyle creep. That quiet upgrade every year, the slightly nicer apartment, the slightly more expensive car, the we deserve it vacations on credit. I've fallen into that trap too. I remember upgrading my phone one year when my old one worked perfectly fine. I justified it by saying, I use it every day, which is true. But I also use my couch every day, and I didn't feel the urge to replace that. The $1,000 a month habit forces a question. What do I value more? Today's convenience or tomorrow's freedom? Because if you automate that $1,000 on the first of every month, something interesting happens. You adapt. You stop seeing that money as available. You adjust your lifestyle around what remains. Humans are incredibly adaptable. We adjust to new salaries quickly. That's why raises feel amazing for about 3 months and then become normal. Why not reverse that? Why not let your investments become the non-negotiable expense? Think about it this way. Most people treat investing as what's left over after spending. Wealthy people treat spending as what's left over after investing. It's a subtle shift, but it changes everything. The real asset isn't the $1,000. It's the discipline. It's the identity. When you consistently invest every month, you begin to see yourself differently. You're no longer someone trying to save. You're an investor. And identity drives behavior more than willpower ever will. If you see yourself as a runner, you run. If you see yourself as healthy, you make healthier choices. If you see yourself as someone who builds wealth, you protect that habit fiercely. That's why the habit is the real million-dollar asset. The math that feels slow until it doesn't. Let's zoom in on the numbers for a second. At $1,000 a month, you're investing $12,000 a year. In the first year, even with growth, you won't feel rich. Maybe you'll see $12,800 or $13,000 if markets are kind. It feels incremental, almost underwhelming. By year 5, you might have around $70,000 to $80,000, depending on returns. Nice, but not life-changing. Year 10, maybe around $180,000 to $200,000. Now it's starting to look real. But still, you're not quitting your job. Here's where it gets interesting. Around year 20, compounding begins to pull more weight than you do. Your investments might grow by $40,000 or $50,000 in a single year, more than what you personally contributed. Pause for a second and think about that. The machine you built starts producing more than you're feeding it. By year 30, that growth can be 6 figures in a strong market year. That's when people say, "Wow, you're lucky." Lucky. As if they saw the spreadsheets at midnight. As if they felt the discipline of skipping certain upgrades, certain splurges, certain impulses. Compounding is quiet at first and deafening later. Why does this matter to you? Because most people quit in years 1 through 5. They get discouraged. The account doesn't look impressive. The market drops 20% one year and panic sets in. Headlines scream. Friends say, "See, the market is gambling." And if you stop, the whole trajectory changes. A $1,000 a month habit only works if it's boring enough to survive headlines. That's why broad index funds matter. That's why automation matters. That's why not checking your account every day matters. You don't dig up a seed every morning to see if it's growing. You water it, you wait. The emotional battle, staying invested when it hurts. Let's be real for a moment. There will be years when your account drops. You'll log in and see a number lower than what you remember. You'll feel a knot in your stomach. Maybe you'll think, "I should just pull it out before it gets worse." I remember 2008. I wasn't wealthy. I wasn't sophisticated. I just saw red numbers and felt fear. The news made it sound like the financial world was ending. People around me were pulling out, going to cash. It's incredibly hard to keep investing when everything looks like it's on fire. But here's the paradox. The worst times to invest emotionally are often the best times mathematically. If you keep putting in $1,000 every month during downturns, you're buying more shares at lower prices. It's like your favorite store having a massive sale, but instead of being excited, everyone is running out screaming. When the market recovers, and historically it always has over long enough periods, those discounted shares amplify your growth. But none of this works if you panic. This is where the habit becomes emotional armor. If investing is something you decide to do each month, fear can override it. If investing is something you simply do, like brushing your teeth, fear has less leverage. So how do you build that resilience? You zoom out. Instead of staring at the 1-year chart, look at the 30-year chart. Instead of reacting to daily headlines, remember that markets reflect human progress over time, innovation, productivity, adaptation. Humans are messy, economies wobble, but over decades, progress tends to march forward. Your job isn't to predict the next crash. Your job is to outlast it. What $1,000 really represents. Let's step away from charts and talk about life. What is $1,000 a month? For some people, it's cutting one major expense. For others, it's increasing income, asking for a raise, starting a side project, freelancing on weekends. I once worked with someone who said, "I don't have an extra $1,000. And she was right, at first. But instead of giving up, she asked a better question. How can I create $1,000? That question changed her trajectory. She negotiated her salary. She cut a car payment by refinancing. She canceled 2 subscriptions she barely used. She started consulting 1 night a week. It wasn't glamorous. She was tired some days. She complained about spreadsheets. We laughed about how adulthood is just endless optimization. But within a year, she had her $1,000 habit. And something else happened. She stopped feeling powerless. Because here's the deeper truth. The $1 million is a byproduct. The real transformation is from consumer to builder. When you dedicate $1,000 a month to your future, you're telling yourself, I am someone who plans. I am someone who invests. I am someone who thinks long-term. That identity bleeds into other areas. You make better career decisions. You evaluate purchases differently. You feel calmer during financial conversations because you know you're moving forward. It's not just math. It's momentum. The $1 million timeline, earlier versus later. Now let's talk about timing. If you start at 25 and invest $1,000 a month at 8%, you could cross $1 million in your mid-50s. If you start at 35, it might be your mid-60s. If you start at 45, it gets harder. You may need to invest more or accept a later timeline. Time is the multiplier you can't buy back. I sometimes think about my younger self, the one who hesitated, who thought, I'll start when I make more. I wish I could gently shake him and say, just start small, increase later. Because here's another secret. It doesn't have to be $1,000 immediately. It can start at $200, then $400, then $700. As your income grows, your habit grows. The key is consistency and escalation. When you get a raise, increase your investment before upgrading your lifestyle. When you pay off a debt, redirect that payment to investments. Let your financial life evolve intentionally. 30 years feels long, but starting 10 years from now will feel worse. You know that quiet regret you feel when you think, I should have started earlier. You can prevent that feeling right now. The $1 million isn't the finish line. Let's imagine you do it. 30 years pass. The account crosses 7 figures. You log in one day and see $1,002,347. You blink. Do you feel different? Maybe a little. But here's what's interesting. The $1 million doesn't feel like a finish line. It feels like stability. At 4% withdrawal, that $1 million could generate around $40,000 a year. Combined with other income sources, Social Security, maybe part-time work, it's breathing room. It's options. It's the ability to say no to a job you hate, to take a sabbatical, to help a family member, to not panic over every unexpected bill. Money, at its best, buys choice. And choice reduces fear. That's what the $1,000 habit really builds. Not status. Not bragging rights. Freedom from constant financial anxiety. A quiet encouragement. If you've made it this far, maybe something inside you is shifting. Maybe you're doing the math in your head. Maybe you're thinking about your current spending. Maybe you're feeling slightly overwhelmed. That's okay. Don't focus on the $1 million. Focus on the first automated transfer. Focus on this month. Set up an investment account. Choose a simple, low-cost index fund. Automate a realistic amount. Then protect it. Increase it when you can. Forgive yourself if you started late. Forgive yourself for past mistakes. Almost everyone has a financial regret story. That's part of being human. The difference between those who build wealth and those who don't isn't perfection. It's persistence. A $1,000 a month habit won't make headlines. It won't impress strangers. But over decades, it can quietly build $1 million. And more importantly, it can build a version of you who thinks long-term, acts intentionally, and sleeps a little better at night. So next time you're sitting in your car after work, staring at the dashboard, thinking about numbers, ask yourself a different question. Not, how do I get rich? But, what habit can I start that my future self will thank me for? Then, start. Slowly, consistently, quietly. And let time do what it has always done for those patient enough to partner with it. It compounds.